I never expected the text to come from her. I never expected the words or the consequences that followed. The night was quiet, too quiet, actually. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the flickering screen of a news feed that I didn't even care about. My mind was in a million places, yet not one of them had anything to do with Emily. It wasn't that things had been bad between us. It was that things had been so normal. Too normal. The kind of normal that felt like it was slowly suffocating us. We'd stopped talking about anything important, and somehow, we both pretended not to notice. The small cracks started to widen, but I didn't want to see them. So, when my phone buzzed that evening, I didn't think anything of it at first. Just another message, probably her telling me what she wanted for dinner or asking me to pick something up on my way home. But when I saw her name on the screen, a cold knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't like the usual messages we exchanged. This one had an eerie, final feel to it. The text read, "I found someone else." For a second, I thought it was a joke. A cruel joke, maybe. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to make sense of what I was reading. It couldn't be real. But then another message came through. She didn't wait for me to respond. She didn't give me a chance to process anything. It was like she had rehearsed it 100 times. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. This is over." I felt a rush of heat in my chest, but it wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was this strange, heavy weight that pressed down on me, paralyzing me in a way I never thought possible. How could she be so sure? So final? I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe a conversation. Maybe a face-to-face argument. But this wasn't how I imagined it. She was cutting me off with nothing more than a cold text message. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to say. But I knew, deep down, I had nothing left to say. My heart was too heavy to even form the words to fight back. So I did the only thing I could think of. I typed, "As you wish." It wasn't because I agreed with her, or because I thought it was okay. It was because I had reached the point where I didn't care anymore. I was tired. I was exhausted from trying to hold on to something that was slipping through my fingers. And in that moment, I realized that she wasn't the person I thought she was. No, she had already moved on long before she sent me that message. It was strange how quickly everything changed. 1 minute, she was my wife, the person I thought I would grow old with. The next, she was a stranger, no more than a name on a phone screen. I didn't hear from her the rest of the night. No follow-up message, no apology. Just nothing. I woke up the next morning, expecting the same. But then, the phone buzzed again. And it wasn't from her. It was a message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was a wrong number. But then I saw the name. It wasn't a name I recognized, but it was a name that made my blood run cold. It was the person she had been seeing. That's when I knew this wasn't just a text. This was the beginning of something much darker than I could have ever prepared for. The message from the unknown number wasn't just unsettling. It felt like a trap snapping shut around me. I could barely bring myself to open it, but the urge to know, to understand what was really going on, was too strong. My fingers shook as I swiped the screen. The message was short. A simple, clean statement that sent a chill down my spine. "She's mine now. Don't try to contact her again." I froze. My mind tried to make sense of it, but all I could think about was Emily. Her. With someone else. And not just anyone. This person was making it clear they were staking a claim. And it wasn't the typical, "I'm sorry," text you get when someone's being rude or distant. This felt like an ultimatum, a warning. I stared at the phone for a long time, feeling something gnaw at my insides. A mix of humiliation, disbelief, and pure, unfiltered rage. I didn't want to give this stranger any more power over me. I didn't want to feel like I was being dragged into their drama. I wanted to pretend it wasn't happening, to believe that maybe this was just some sick joke or a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. For the first time, I felt a strange clarity. The truth had slapped me across the face. Emily had already been gone, long before I saw that text. I was just the last to realize it. It wasn't just the affair. It was the complete abandonment of everything I had believed in. My mind spun as I thought back to the little things that had changed over the past few months. The late nights, the secretive behavior, the fact that she'd stopped wearing the ring I'd given her when we got married. How long had this been going on? How deep had it run? My heart was racing, my thoughts were clouded with 1,000 questions, but one stood out above the rest. What was I going to do now? The first impulse, of course, was to contact Emily, to demand answers, to make her explain herself, to try and fix everything. But that impulse was quickly overshadowed by another. What if she never loved me? What if the woman I'd spent years with had been lying to me all along? Before I could spiral any further, the phone buzzed again. It was Emily this time. No, hi. Or hey, how are you? Just a blunt, cold statement. I'm moving on. I hope you'll do the same. That was it. There was no emotion in her words, no sign of the woman I had married. Just this finality that made it clear she had already moved on, and in her mind, there was no room for me in the picture. I felt numb. It's hard to explain the feeling of complete emptiness, like your whole life has just been reduced to dust and scattered in the wind. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was stuck in this suspended state between wanting to scream at the unfairness of it all and just accepting that nothing was going to change. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water, but I couldn't even drink it. My hands were shaking too badly. I leaned against the counter, staring blankly out the window, trying to make sense of everything. It was like the world around me had been flipped upside down. The house, the life I had built, everything was suddenly foreign. Everything was wrong. As I stood there, my phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from my email. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want anything more to do with this twisted reality Emily had created. But my curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. It was a photo. A picture of Emily and the man she was seeing, laughing together at some restaurant. They were sitting close, their hands touching on the table. It was a normal picture, except it wasn't. The casual way they were sitting, how natural it all seemed, made it clear that this wasn't some fleeting fling. No, this was the beginning of something serious. Something I wasn't a part of. The message that came with the photo was simple. I thought you'd like to see what you've lost. And just like that, everything fell into place. Emily had moved on, not just emotionally, but physically. And now I was the last to know. I spent the next few hours in a haze. The world felt like it was moving around me, but I was stuck in one place. The photo still burned in my mind, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. The man who was now everything I wasn't. Everything I used to be for her. I wanted to scream, to shatter something, to make the hurt go away. But I couldn't. The truth had already set in. Emily had chosen him, and I had been left in the dust. By the time I snapped out of my stupor, it was dark outside. I hadn't eaten, hadn't moved much from my spot on the couch. My phone had long since gone silent, but the weight of those few messages lingered, suffocating me. The reality of what was happening began to settle deeper into my chest. I decided to get out of the house, if only to clear my mind. Walking aimlessly through the streets felt like the only thing that made sense. I needed to go somewhere, anywhere, to escape from the suffocating silence of the home I once shared with Emily. That's when I saw him. I didn't recognize him at first. He was just a guy sitting at a bar, laughing with friends, enjoying a night out. But something about him caught my attention. Maybe it was the ease with which he smiled, or the confidence he exuded, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. And then it hit me, the man in the photo, the one with Emily. I froze. My mind reeled, the blood in my veins running cold. There he was, the person who had quietly slipped into my life, into my marriage, without me even realizing. I wasn't angry, not yet. But the realization was like a slap across my face. This man was living the life I thought I had with her. I didn't know what I expected, but this wasn't it. I wasn't sure what drove me to approach him, but something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the need for answers, or maybe it was just the sheer absurdity of the situation. I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to know. I walked up to him, my feet moving faster than my thoughts. He didn't notice me at first, but when I was standing right in front of him, he looked up. His smile faltered for just a second. It was subtle, but it was enough. He knew who I was. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice casual, but there was a hint of tension behind it. He probably thought I was some kind of jealous ex, which, in a way, I was. But I didn't want to come off that way. I wasn't here for a confrontation, at least, not yet. "You don't know me," I said, my voice steady. "But I know who you are. You're with Emily." He didn't flinch, didn't seem surprised, but there was something about the way his eyes narrowed that told me he wasn't as calm as he appeared. "Is this about her?" he asked, his voice cool. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "It's about her." There was a long pause, and for a moment, it felt like we were both stuck in this strange limbo, neither of us knowing where the conversation was going. Then, he sighed, leaned back in his chair, and took a long sip from his drink. "Look, man," he said, setting the glass down and looking up at me. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but, well, she doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "She told you that?" "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "She's moved on." I tried to hold it together, but something inside me was breaking. It wasn't just the words. It was the way he said it. So casually, like he was talking about the weather. Like it was no big deal that he had taken my place in her life. My world, my relationship, had just been reduced to a footnote in their story. "You really think she's happy with you?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I hated how vulnerable I sounded, but I couldn't help it. The anger, the humiliation, it was all too much. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just stared at me, like he was waiting for something. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "She's happy with me, yeah," he said, his voice almost too calm. "But it's not about me. It's about her. She's different now. She's not the person you think she is." I wanted to lash out, to tell him he was wrong, to scream at him that Emily was still the woman I loved. But I couldn't. I had no idea who she was anymore. And that realization, that gut-wrenching, soul-crushing truth, was worse than anything he could have said. I turned to leave, my mind racing. My chest felt heavy, my stomach twisted in knots. I had to get out of there. I had to find a way to breathe again. But before I reached the door, he called out to me. "Hey," he said, his voice softer now, almost pitying. "I didn't want it to happen like this. I didn't want to hurt you. But she made her choice." I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I knew exactly what he meant. Emily had made her choice long ago, and now I was just too late to do anything about it. The night air outside felt strangely colder as I walked away from the bar. I couldn't get the image of him out of my head. That man, the one who had just casually told me that Emily had moved on. It didn't even feel like a real conversation. Like I'd been dragged into a nightmare, a dream where everything was upside down. I tried to push it all aside. Tried to focus on just moving forward, even though every step felt like I was sinking deeper into quicksand. As I made my way back to the car, I couldn't help but check my phone again. A part of me was hoping that something, anything, from Emily would pop up. A message, an apology, something that would make me feel like I wasn't the fool I knew I was. But no, nothing. It was strange how silence can be more painful than words. That's what I realized as I drove home. There was nothing left to say. Emily had made her choice, and all I was now was a memory she wanted to forget. When I finally got back to the apartment, the weight of it all felt unbearable. The empty space where she used to be. The lingering scent of her perfume that still clung to the pillows. I threw myself onto the couch, burying my face in my hands, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of everything. That's when I saw it. The small envelope sitting on the coffee table. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it felt like it was mocking me. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I turned it over. There was no name on the front. No return address. Just my name written in familiar handwriting. Emily's handwriting. I didn't know what to think. The envelope felt wrong. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I almost didn't want to open it. But curiosity won over. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The message was brief, but every word felt like a punch. "Malcolm, I'm sorry, but I've made my decision. This isn't just about him. It's about me. I need to find myself. Please understand. I'll always care about you, but this is over." That was it. No explanation. No discussion. Just an ending. I read the words over and over, but they never stopped hurting. The finality of them. The coldness. Emily had chosen this path without a second thought. There was no turning back now. But something deep inside me refused to accept it. There was still a part of me that held on to the hope that she might come back. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't really the end. But I knew, deep down, that this was the final piece of the puzzle. And now I had to face the harsh truth. She was gone, and I had to figure out what was left of me. I couldn't sleep that night. How could I? The letter from Emily kept playing on repeat in my mind. I kept asking myself what I missed. Where did it all go wrong? I had seen the warning signs, hadn't I? The late nights, the distant looks, the way she seemed so uninterested. But I never thought it would actually come to this. The following morning, I woke up groggy, still reeling from the letter. The apartment felt even emptier now, if that was possible. I could hear every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains. There was a heaviness in the air that made it hard to breathe. I forced myself to get up, make coffee, and pretend everything was fine. But nothing was fine. And as much as I tried to push it aside, the truth was clear. Emily was gone, and she wasn't coming back. It wasn't just the affair, it was everything. The way she had checked out long before I realized. I was a fool for thinking things were just a phase, that we could fix it. But the truth was, she was already gone emotionally, long before she found someone else. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I knew I should delete her number, cut all ties, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I kept wondering what she was doing. Was she with him now? Was she happier? Did she even think about me? The question gnawed at me, and for the first time, I realized something even more unsettling. I didn't know who she was anymore. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, was gone. And in her place was this stranger who had cut me out of her life with no hesitation. I grabbed my coat and left the apartment, hoping some fresh air would clear my mind. The streets outside were buzzing with life, people moving around me, lost in their own worlds. But I wasn't lost in a crowd. I was alone in the middle of it all, and it felt like the loneliest place in the world. I walked for hours, barely noticing where I was going. The familiar streets had become foreign. The places we used to visit, the ones that once held memories of happy times, now seemed tainted. The coffee shop where we had our first date. The park bench where we used to sit for hours, talking about our future. Everything had changed. By the time I finally stopped walking, I found myself standing in front of a small bar, the kind of place I never used to visit. But for some reason, I felt drawn to it. Maybe it was the need to forget, to drown out the pain. Maybe I just needed to be around people. I stepped inside, the doorbell jingling as I walked in. The low hum of conversation and clinking glasses filled the air. I took a seat at the bar and ordered a drink, hoping it would numb the ache in my chest. I didn't know how much time had passed, but at some point, I felt a tap on my shoulder. When I turned around, my breath caught in my throat. It was him, the man from the photo. He was standing there, looking at me with that same smug expression from the night before. The same calm, collected demeanor that made my blood boil. My heart skipped a beat, but this time, I didn't freeze. I didn't shy away. I had nothing left to lose. "You again," I said, my voice colder than I expected. He smiled, almost like he was amused. "What? You think I'm just going to disappear?" He sat down next to me without waiting for an invitation. "You know, it's funny," he continued, casually picking up his drink. "I thought you'd be more of a challenge. But you're just here." His words stung more than I wanted to admit. The way he spoke about me, about us, it was as if I was a minor inconvenience in their little story. But it was clear now, he had already moved in, taking what I thought was mine without a second thought. I clenched my fists under the bar, but I didn't say anything. There was no point. What could I say? He already had the upper hand, and the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Emily had moved on with him, and he was perfectly content with rubbing it in my face. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why her? Why did you want her?" He looked at me, his eyes narrowing just slightly. "She's different," he said, as if it was the simplest answer in the world. "She's not like you. She's real. She's free." And that was it. The thing that cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just about me losing her. It was that I had never really understood her. I had always thought I was the one who knew her best, who understood her needs, her wants, her desires. But now, it was clear that I was wrong. He knew something about her that I didn't. He stood up, as if the conversation was over. "You'll figure it out eventually," he said with a smirk. "But I'm not sticking around for the fireworks. Enjoy the rest of your night." And just like that, he was gone. I sat there, stunned. His words echoed in my mind. "She's free." It felt like a slap in the face. The woman I had tried so hard to hold on to was free, and I was the one left in the dust, with nothing but memories and a shattered heart. The silence in the bar was suffocating after he left. I couldn't stop replaying his words in my mind. She's free. The way he said it, like it was something she had been waiting for. Something I couldn't give her. I sat there for a long time, nursing my drink, but it didn't help. The burn in my chest wouldn't go away. I had always thought that Emily and I shared something special. But now, it felt like I was the last to know. I was a footnote in her life. I stumbled back to my apartment, each step heavier than the last. The streets felt darker now. The places I had walked 100 times before were unfamiliar. How quickly everything had changed. I entered the apartment and froze. The air felt different. It felt colder. That's when I saw it, her suitcase. It was sitting by the door, half-packed, as if she had been planning to leave for a while. Maybe she had. Maybe I had just been too blind to see it. I walked over to it, my hands shaking as I opened the lid. Clothes, some of them still with the tags on. Her favorite books, the ones we used to read together. And at the bottom, a small envelope. The same kind as the one she had left me before. I ripped it open, my pulse racing. Inside was a note. Just a few short words. Goodbye, Malcolm. I hope you find peace. The finality of it hit me like a wave. She was really gone. And this time, she wasn't coming back. I sat on the floor, holding the note in my hands, feeling something inside me crack. I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal or the realization that I had been too late to fix anything. She had made her decision, and I had nothing left to say. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself, but then my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from her. It was from him, the man she was with now. The text was simple. Don't bother trying to get her back. She's with me now, and that's where she belongs. I didn't even know how to react. The words felt like a punch to the gut, but something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let him win. I grabbed my coat and headed out again, determined to find the answers I needed. This wasn't over. The city felt colder as I walked through the streets, the shadows growing longer with each passing step. I wasn't sure where I was going, but the anger inside me was pushing me forward. Every step felt like a heavy weight, but I couldn't stop. I needed answers. I needed something to make sense of all this. My phone buzzed again. I checked it, knowing exactly who it would be. The text was still sitting there, waiting for me. From him, the man she was with. The man who had taken my place. She's with me now, don't waste your time. The words stung more than they should have. But what hurt the most wasn't his words. It was the truth behind them. Emily was with him. And somehow, despite everything I had believed, she had chosen him over me. I shoved my phone into my pocket and picked up my pace, the cool night air biting at my skin. I needed to do something. I had to face it head on. If I didn't, I knew I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what I could have done differently. It wasn't until I found myself standing outside the restaurant that I realized how far I'd come. This was the place. The one where Emily and I used to go on Friday nights, where we'd sit at the corner booth, laughing over our favorite meal. The place that used to feel like home. Now, it was a reminder of everything I had lost. I stood outside, staring through the window, trying to steady my breath. I could see them. Emily, sitting across from him, laughing at something he said. The way she leaned in, the way her eyes sparkled. It wasn't just an affair. This was something deeper. Something real. I wanted to turn around and walk away. To pretend I hadn't seen anything. To save myself from the pain that was creeping in. But something stopped me. I couldn't. Not now. Not after everything. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled, and both of them turned to look at me. Emily's face fell when she saw me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Regret? Guilt? But then it was gone, replaced with the coldness I had become all too familiar with. He smiled at me, the smug look on his face as if he knew he'd won. You really can't let go, can you? He said, his tone dripping with condescension. I stood there, feeling my fists clench at my sides, the anger bubbling up once more. I couldn't even look at Emily. Not yet. I needed to get the words out first. You think this is funny? I asked, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. That you can just take everything? That I'm supposed to watch this? I gestured toward them, the sight of them sitting together, so comfortably, so right together. He leaned back in his chair, his smirk widening. You had your chance. She chose me. You should respect that. I felt something snap inside me, something I didn't know I was still holding on to. The years we had spent together, the memories, the love, were suddenly nothing more than a distant echo. Emily opened her mouth, like she was going to say something, but I cut her off before she could. Don't. Please. The words came out more broken than I intended. I don't want your pity. I don't want your explanation. I need to know. Why? Why him? She looked down, her fingers playing nervously with her napkin. Malcolm, please. Her voice was softer than I expected, and I almost believed her, almost thought that maybe there was still something there. But then she said the words that cut deeper than anything he had said. Because I'm happy, Malcolm. I haven't been happy in a long time. And it's not about you, it's about me. Her voice was steady now, as if she had convinced herself. I need this. I need him. I need something different. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her how she could throw everything away so easily. But I just stood there, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. That's it then? I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. No second chances? No apology? You just walked away? She didn't answer. She just stared at me, her eyes empty. And that was the moment I knew there was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air hitting me like a wave. But this time, it didn't help. It didn't numb the pain. I didn't look back. The city felt quieter as I walked away from the restaurant. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the unanswered questions, felt heavy, but there was something different now. A shift. It was like a cloud that had been hanging over me for so long was beginning to part. I had walked into that restaurant expecting to feel more broken, more lost. But as I stepped into the cool night, I realized something. I had nothing left to prove to them. I had nothing left to hold on to. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need his approval. What I needed was to let go. It was strange how quickly things could change. A few days ago, I couldn't imagine life without Emily. She had been my world, the person I'd planned everything with. But now, in this moment, I could finally breathe. The pain was still there, but it wasn't suffocating me anymore. It was a part of the healing process, like the bruises from a battle fought, but no longer controlling my every step. I spent the next few weeks focused on myself. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with over the years. I started taking long walks in the park, something I used to do before everything felt so complicated. I even started picking up old hobbies, painting, reading books I hadn't touched in years. I began to realize that while Emily had been a huge part of my life, I was still me. I had a life, too. A life that wasn't defined by her absence. One day, I found myself sitting in that same park where Emily and I used to go. I had been walking around for a while, trying to take in the changing seasons, the fresh air. And then, out of nowhere, I heard someone calling my name. I turned to see a familiar face. It was Sarah, an old friend from high school. I hadn't seen her in years, but there was something comforting about her smile, something that immediately felt like a reminder of who I used to be before all the chaos. She sat down next to me, and we started talking, catching up on everything that had happened in our lives. It felt easy, natural. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't trying to carry the weight of my past mistakes. We met a few more times after that. Sarah had a way of making me laugh, of pulling me out of the darkness without even trying. Slowly, I found myself looking forward to our conversations, to the warmth that came with just being around someone who genuinely cared about me. Months passed, and the scars from the past began to fade, replaced by the simple joy of being myself again. I learned that happiness didn't come from other people. It wasn't about waiting for someone to save me or fix things. It was about finding peace with myself. It was about reclaiming my life. One evening, after a long day, I found myself sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset. For the first time in a long time, I felt content. I had moved on, not because I had to, but because I realized that I deserved more than what I had been holding on to. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew that the future was no longer something to fear. It was something to embrace.